Hello, everyone, and welcome to the last day of the Manila Bobcat PTG. And today we have a couple of more topics to cover. So I think we're going to have like great discussions. We intend to cover the create share from replicated snapshot and keep search share replica on replica promote, TechDet, scheduler data placement based on specific vendor tool, and OpenStack SDK updates. So yeah, I think we can get started with our first topic, which is create share from replicated snapshot. There is an etherpad for this, so I'll be sharing both the PTG etherpad and the etherpad for this discussion on the chat. So yep, I think we have Maurice joining us today to talk about this topic. So Maurice, would you like to get started?
Yes, yeah. So hi, welcome everybody. I have a proposal, or I would like to talk about a thing that was brought to attention from some of my customers, and I was thinking if it's a thing that could go into Manila, or if it's not making sense at all for other drivers maybe. Because the thing I'm going to talk about is, well, it's NetApp specific in a way that my customers come from a world where they had their own NetApp filer infrastructure, so they were running it by their own without OpenStack on top, so without Manila. So they were actively making use of the NetApp on top features, and now they look at Manila. They are kind of, well, we consolidated it in-house, so they are kind of forced to use Manila and cannot use their own NetApps anymore, and they are missing. So there are nice deep NetApp features. Yeah, the heading is kind of when I was writing this like 2 weeks ago or so, I was just quickly thinking about how to solve that with Manila. So that only gives the general direction. So create share from replicated snapshot or keeping source share and replica promote are just two of the possible outcomes how this could be maybe solved. So let's jump in the use case. So what were my customers doing in the past? So they had a replication setup, a primary and a secondary replica. Primary is writable, it is mounted, and the secondary is not writable. They were using the NetApp feature to break the snap mirror, so to say they are pausing the mirroring so that the secondary does not receive the updates from the primary anymore. And they wanted to do some smoke testing, so they kept the primary like it was, and they were testing some things on the secondary. And if the things were successful, the tests, then they reestablished the mirror and in a way that they mirror now the secondary to the primary, so that things they already tested get applied to the primary. And if the tests were not successful, they reestablished the mirror in the other way. So they were overwriting the things that did not work back with the primary. For them, the location of the primary and secondary made a difference. So they always have spread their installations across availability zones. So you can imagine that the primary is in availability zone A and the secondary in availability zone B, and it would matter for them or where they would do these tasks. But yeah, that's for the sake of simplicity, let's assume it does not matter, so that we not get confused about primary, secondary all the time, can just assume they can be treated equal. So how to solve this with Manila? I came up with two workflows. One is labeled Manila A. If you would scroll up. Again, yeah, thanks. So how could this be solved with what we have in Manila currently? So they could create a snapshot and create a share from that snapshot. So have a cert volume, a cert share, and they could do their activity on that cert one. And if that was successful, they could, well, they have several options. They could delete that one and apply the same changes they did on the primary they have, or they could throw away the old secondary and primary and use the new one going forward. Problems with that I highlighted here are that they would need another additional quota, so they would need another snapshot and another share. That would mean they, since they pay for quota, they would need to pay more for that. We would also need really additional capacity on the storage backend because that's implementation specific, but we are using clone split on create, so the data would already on create of the share be copied. Yeah, and there are more details. This 4.11, that's also a thing that could go wrong. So they would have to reapply the tests, and the outcome may be different if they, if they, it could happen that they not apply really the same thing. Yeah, jumping to the next possibility to solve this with Manila is option B, though they could create a snapshot and do their activity on the primary, and if the things go wrong, they could revert to the state before the snapshot. Problems with that approach are that they also need the additional quota, and that the change they are doing would happen on the primary. So if things go wrong, then they don't have an well, they are disturbing their life systems. So also not too good for them. So I came up with several proposals how we could tackle that. So the ideal way would be to directly implement their old workflow, so that we would allow in Manila to break, to pause the replication relationship. So have a time where both replicas become writable. They would still stay in the replication relationship because we want to resync. We want to resume the replication relationship later. So that would be how it worked for them in the past, and we could mimic that with Manila. And if that is not intended, or if you say no, we don't want to have that, then there are two alternatives, but both proposals, proposal 2 and 3, all would have their downsides, and I don't know if you would want to look at that in detail. Maybe talk about the proposal first, one first. What do you think?
Yeah, thanks for representing like this and for bringing us some context. Yeah, I was thinking of proposal 1, like breaking and pausing replication. Yeah, I think this could kind of work, but I'm not. I still didn't like think deep dive on it. Like I don't know if there are others in the call that actually like had something in their minds, right? Like when they were like listening about this. But I mean, it's a workflow that it would involve a couple of things happening at the same time. For example, like the share instances would need to be modified, and I think like the calls would be need to would like be sent to the drivers, and we will like the driver would modify the volumes for some time to allow them to um, be writable, like the ones that are not the active replicas. And this is something that would happen basically for a disaster recovery scenario, right? Am I right? Or I mean, because writable, it's actually like you can write things in the both instances, that because both of them like are writable at the same time. But for DR, like that would be the same scenario, the only scenario, right?
What do you mean? So no, they would generally test their stuff this way. So this is not a scenario they would only execute when things fall down, but that would be a normal workflow they would execute, don't know, weekly or whenever they want to test changes.
Yeah, okay. I think that's kind of the question I had. The only thing that came into my mind, and I was, okay. But thanks.
It
Yeah,
does.
of course, if you have more than 2 replicas in the game, then this gets probably a bit more complicated.
Yeah.
Yeah, that one. And I mean, could we go through the proposal 2 and 3 and what problems that you had with them?
Yeah, we could do. Yeah. So proposal 2 and 3 are also would also mean changing Manila. Proposal 2 would be to allow to create a share from snapshot where the secondary is living. So currently, if I do a snapshot and I want to create the share, then that would happen on the primary side. So the solution that would give me is that I would solve the location problem I excluded a bit, but that is still there for my customers. So it would help them in that way that they could do their testing in the secondary side. So it would help them a bit to have that possibility. And proposal 3 would be when we're doing replica promotion now, then we break the snap mirror relationship and we reverse the replication direction. So that is a kind of 2 things happening in one. And what we could do, we could split that up so that replica promote would not always mean that we reverse the direction of the replication, but that the users could also specify that they would like to keep keep the replication relationship broken off, so that they would have two shares they can writable mount after promoting the secondaries. They would keep the primary also as a writable instance. And the difference to my first proposal would be that those two, so the new 2 shares would not be in any relationship any longer. So they would be two independent shares that were previously primary and secondary. And yeah, the downside would be that they still want to have a secondary again after the tests, and they would have to set up a new replication relationship. That would mean an additional data transfer. And yeah, adding up on top of that, there is my proposal 3B. So that would add up on top of proposal 3. So I sort of maybe, yeah, allowed to have so to have the replication relationship broken and have two independent shares after that, but also implement the other way around. Implement that you can come with two shares and make them tie them together in a replication relationship. So say share 1 will be the new primary and share 2 will be the new secondary. And that would, if the customers know what they are doing, if they know that those two were previously already primary and secondary, that would yeah, save a lot on the data transfer. So that Manila would not have to yeah, manage that those two are belonging together when they are broken off. And instead it would morph, their customers would have to do that. So that would shift the focus a bit of the complexity of managing the two writable replicas.
Yeah, each of these has different pitfalls, and
Yeah.
I mean, even in terms of implementation, not just in terms of the use case solving. I mean, preserving the use case, and the use case kind of makes sense to me in terms of being able to temporarily use a replica. But the one thing that does give me a little bit of I mean, it does make me a little nervous is the reversing of the relationship without actually, after a pausing of the relationship. So presumably your solution one is translates more directly to what they're currently doing, and your first proposal, that is, and that probably can make sense even with with all sorts of replication that we currently support, where we can basically say, okay, stop syncing, and maybe you have permission to do anything on the secondary replicas at that point. Let's say if you're DR, we might have to do some access rule transitions to allow you to start using that share. Maybe if it's readable, we'll have the same kind of access rule transitions, that is to make sure that everything is read write instead of read only, and I mean where it's applicable. And if it's the other case, which is too fancy, it just has all of those access rule relationships, so pausing it would not make that much of a difference. The problem that I have is with the reversing of the relationship in case you have to rebuild it. That sounds a lot like proposal 3 at that point to me. Uh, it's actually rebuild being promote, but don't worry about doing a sync from the old primary to the new primary. Nothing of that sort. Just force a promotion, uh, of the other way around. How can we be sure that works? And I don't. I mean, I guess it is quite a lot on the back end implementation at that point, and we don't know if we can get a consistent behavior across the backends.
Yeah. So yeah. So you are. That would be a new proposal. So that would be something like a light version of my proposal then, so that you can only resume the replication in the direction that it had been before.
Right. And
Yeah.
and if it's but that does mean data loss on your I mean if they did write something to the secondary and they want to make it that does mean data loss, because if you reestablish the relationship, that the primary didn't have that data, so it will just go ahead and overwrite whatever was there in the secondary.
Yeah, and they would have to make sure that they reapply the same thing then
To the primary outside of Manila somehow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is that workable? I'm thinking in terms of like having a generic capability that every backend can support.
I think that would already help, at least from the cost perspective. Yeah, they would not get a third copy to do their actions. So it would already be a good way forward. Yeah.
That's one suggestion. And the other is, if you want to pursue what you had with alternative one, which is, pause the relationship and rebuild it the other way around. I mean, you can override the APIs that are currently there. I mean, for the second part, which is for promote. So a paused relationship, we can assume can be promoted. And we just have to probably introduce a new behavior to the whole promote logic, where we tell the backend driver, hey, this is okay. The relationship was paused, but we still want to force a promotion here. And what that would mean for the backend driver is, this is a paused thing, so I don't need to do any sync, or I don't need to try to do any sync from the primary to the secondary. I just go ahead and reverse the relationship and then perform the sync. That would be like an overloaded behavior that we would have to somehow expose to the end user, this is different. It isn't the same as your previous promote. And if a backend cannot support it, they would need to know, like maybe some sort of an error that says, no, this isn't supported with this backend. Like, you cannot pause and promote with this backend, but you can pause and promote with the NetApp backend. That sort of thing.
Yeah. Yeah, sounds good. Yeah.
So, I mean, in
So
a
that would be
sense, that
the combination of both things you just mentioned would give the full flexibility they would need. Yeah.
yeah. So in a sense, we already have the resync API. And so having a resume API that is tenant facing, resync was meant for like forcing an update, and it's a very similar behavior. But we did say we could have a tenant facing API which has the same kind of thing, except in this case, if the snapper relationship or a replication relationship was paused at some point, you had some API call that you had to make to resume stuff. That may presumably be a different API from um, performing a regular update. And so we could introduce a resume API as well, besides the pause. And that would take care of, preserving the relationship, not promoting anything, but just you just decided to override whatever it is, whatever changes that you had during in the secondary in the meanwhile when you paused the instance. So I guess I'm kind of trying to build the user experience in terms of I mean, we could give them the ability to pause, to resume, or to promote, but promote without performing a sync. Like tell the driver somehow that you need to force a promotion now of this paused instance. And we surface these capabilities somehow to the end user. Oops. I'm not sure I came across my microphone.
Yeah, I could hear only half of what you said.
Yeah, sounds different.
Just a second. Hi, sorry if you were waiting on me. I had mic issues.
No worries.
All right. Don't know where until where you heard me, but I was thinking. So you had the pause API, the resume API, and the differently performing promote API. And I feel like the missing piece is allowing a user to see an API error rather than have try something and not know whether it'll work or not. And that I would be I actually don't know how you could implement that. Like how do you surface it for each stuff? And in the past, when we could not surface something like this, we introduced a check mechanism. And you're probably familiar with that because most of those features were built, based on feedback from your users itself when they were updating security services. Can they do it? Let's first check. Can they were migrating share servers? Can they do it? Let's first check, sort of a thing. So if we introduce a check mechanism for this, maybe we get that early feedback. But I don't know, is there any other way we can, for a user to know either, okay, I try something and it tells me right away that it's not going to work, or I know from even before trying that this action is going to work or not. Um, and that way, you can bake it into the API.
Yeah, it sounds reasonable to me. At least I didn't think of any problems so far with an approach like this. But having a check operation, it's kind of consistent with things that we have been implementing in the past, especially for things that could take some time and like they could be also related to different locations. So yes, I think this would be okay, at least in my point of view.
Yeah, but there are downsides to this, right? Like, I mean, the first being you don't know when you're creating your share and creating your replicas that someday you might be able to pause this replication relationship or not. It's so as an end user, you're taking a gamble at that point, and you don't have a way to influence yourself to get into a situation where you can use the pause and unpause features.
Yeah, you have to ask your cloud operator.
Right.
that's not really a self-service. Yeah.
I think the way we solved it for security services was we provided a backend capability as well as the check operation, I think. And I could be wrong here. At least I remember a similar.
No, I think you're right.
Yeah. And so what that would mean is you would have a brand new capability that you start using in a share type, and that would probably allow both Manila and the end user to know, okay, so the share type has this, so I'm going to make sure I send it to a backend that has this. And then at that point, I guess you don't need the check capabilities. I guess the check was mostly done because we had I think we had too many hosts to deal with when we were doing the security service update, for instance.
Yes. And also the possibility of some of them being down and so on.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Yeah, so it was called security service update support. How does this work with, fan out replication? Do you think? Like, how if somebody had an active share, multiple replicas, if you went ahead and paused this, would Manila need to go apply all of these rule transitions, etc., to all of the replicas? Or is there a reason to think, oh, we need to pause just one replica?
Good question. I think both scenarios make sense, so I'm unsure.
Yeah, I think it's worth specking it out. Like, I mean, so we have some open questions, and we might be able to do this by talking to, thinking about the vendor implementations as well. And in this case, in case of upstream, we have the ZFS on Linux stuff, which I'm quite confident is capable of doing these things, such as pausing, unpausing, and stuff like that, because most of it is driven by the driver. We take a snapshot and we transfer that snapshot over. And so we can just stop doing that operation, I think. So it's pretty much the same thing as NetApp would do, except there aren't fancy APIs, I guess, to do that. So you have a reference that you can build out of that. But then it's possible somebody will come along and say, no, we cannot support this the way you're designing it. And so we'll be able to know it based on that spec review. What do you think?
Yeah, makes sense, I guess.
but the use case certainly makes sense to me, and which is kind of where I think, you know, the replication stuff was, I mean, V1 at any point of time, it was giving you broad strokes, you know, operations like, okay, you can create a replica, you can promote a replica, you can force resync of a replica, but not much else. And so we did at that time when we were thinking about it, think about pause and unpause as a possible evolution. But I guess I don't remember all of the discussions back then, but and it's a popular one as well. So in terms of doing planned failovers as well, you sometimes just want to pause. No, this so pause the primary, do your testing on the secondary. But at that point, I guess when you unpause, you just don't care about the data. On the other side, this a rebuild, or rather force the promotion on the other way around when there is new data that's shown up on the on the old secondary. That is a new use case to me. And I sort of like the proposal 3 as well, which is um, you know, separate the replicas. And I think we had discussed this in a past PTG. I'm not too sure, where we were thinking, okay, so you have a replication relationship that you've established. At some point, you just want to break it and have two different shares that are just independent of each other. And it's a valid use case, because if you were, let's say, these shares began with a replication relationship, you're done, you know, and you feel like you can actually start using that independently. We don't provide such a thing today. But I don't know whether, you know, like you said, like it has its downsides for your use cases, such as you're not able to reestablish a relationship and things like that.
Yeah.
And the replicated snapshot idea is quite similar as far as implementation goes for us, because we track each snapshot as a separate instance. So if it's somewhere else, we know it's an instance of a different snapshot, but it has I mean, it's mapping to a different physical location. And so it'll be like making sure that that instance no longer belongs to the previous snapshot. So you'd have a new snapshot that you're creating out of that instance. In a sense, the implementation would look quite similar for both uh, proposals 2 and 3. But I feel like, yes, I mean, like you say, it's not solving your use case entirely of, you know, temporarily doing things and reversing relationships in place.
Yeah. And I fear that it's maybe too implementation specific for. So
yeah, that too. But on the other hand, like building generic stuff might be useful in the long run for other use cases as well. So I would be in favor of like discussing this over a spec.
Agree.
Yeah, thanks for your input.
Thanks for bringing up the use cases. That's I don't know. I mean, we at the beginning when we were building out the feature, I'm not sure we looked at all of the possible use cases. So it's nice to see the evolution of this stuff, to be honest.
Indeed. Would you be planning these changes for Bobcat?
Don't know.
Okay, yeah. I need to add like the spec deadline to the agenda yet. I didn't add like the Manila specific topics there, but yeah, yes, I think I'll add that like right after PTG, I think, and then I can share that in Manila weekly meeting. But I would use like kind of the same date format. But and yeah, it is just a matter of curiosity, like to know if this works coming on Bobcat or yeah.
Yeah, what we have one thing that is higher on priority on our agenda, so it depends a bit yeah, how much time we have left in the Bobcat cycle then. And that is the NetApp driver for backup.
Okay.
And if that is done, then we would start working on this, I suppose.
Awesome. Yep. Thanks for the info. Is there something else you'd like to add to this topic? I don't know if someone else has questions.
Not from my side.
Awesome. Right. Thank you for bringing this use case up and for the great discussion. It was good to see like this the lines of thoughts, and also it will be great to see like this kind of evolution for share replica, for the share application feature in general. So yeah, thank you for that. It was good brainstorming. I think if there isn't something else in this topic, we can proceed to the next one, which is TechDebt. We are a couple of minutes over the scheduled time, but nothing to worry about, I think. Okay, so I can start covering the TechDebt topic. And I think there's one part that we tracked from yesterday, which was the SQL Alchemy changes. Basically, so I'll start on TechDebt then. This is basically a topic that we had in a couple of cycles before, and for this time I wanted to focus on a couple of things that have been bugging us, especially with CI and like OpenStack client and a couple of other things. So yeah, basically for CI, there were a couple of discussions, I think, lately. I was chatting with Gotham, and we were discussing the possibility of changing the way we do scenario testing. And this is basically because we have been having issues with VMs. And the thing is, for scenario testing, we don't like only use the VM there. We will do like we'll set up the VMs inside the VM we get from CI. So it's like nested virtualization. And as far as like releases go, and we start getting new releases of systems, the systems like the OSs start getting heavier, and we are starting to run into more issues, and scenario testings are tending to fail more just because we don't have enough resources, or they will time out because there's basically too many things happening at the same time within one VM. So it has been troublesome over the couple cycles, and we are seeing it like kind of getting worse as far as we like start migrating to new images. And one thing that also made us realize this was like getting worse was when during the previous cycle we needed to change the Ubuntu image from our Manila image, like the image we use to set up the VMs inside these jobs. So when we needed to change that to Ubuntu 22, then we realized that we would also need more hardware for the VMs internally, and we needed to take some actions. For example, we reduced the concurrency of a couple of jobs, like the generic one, and we split the jobs. Like there's one job now running the scenario tests and another job running the like regular API test cases. That was one way we splitted this, but I think like they it tends to get worse. So the idea is that we could try to look into different approaches for this. One of these approaches would be trying to instead of creating one VM, so we can mount the shares in the VM. So the scenario testing, basically, we'll have a couple of them. I think I don't remember exactly the number, but it's like 6 or 8 test scenarios where we will basically try to create a VM, create a share, and then mount the share in a VM. Try to write some data in the share, and the VMs, they are like getting very resource intensive. So we were thinking about possible way to automate that with the creation of containers. So instead of like containers are supposed to be a bit lighter than the VMs because we can just choose whatever we are putting inside or whatever we are setting up the container with. So that would be one of the ideas we were thinking about. So it would be less resource intensive, and it would make us like to gain some advantages of it. We this could be also a discussion, and I don't know if someone else is doing this in the other projects, but it would be good to take a look at this because it will help us like in the long term, as like the research we keep getting more resource intensive things, and we are only trying to use band-aids like splitting jobs and doing those kinds of things. So are there thoughts on this? I don't know if I'm missing something you'd like to add here, Gotham.
No, you kind of covered the aspect that we're hitting this more and more as we keep bumping up that test image that we are using for a dual purpose in this case. It is meant to be a service image for any backend that does the service instance, uses the service instance, but we are also using that as our test image in Tempest. And of late, the resources that we are providing it are increasing. And we know that that in Nodepool in upstream Zool, we don't really have all that kind of resources. We have a set profile of the test node that we get, and part of that we also don't. We know there are some issues as well, such as you're booting from. We're booting all of these VMs with ephemeral storage, and they're obviously going to start writing into the root disk space. And we know recently that in some clouds the root disk space is very minimal, and so you boot more of these VMs, you just start the the node runs out of disk space and your job gets killed. So it's we I think we're out of luck in terms of how we can do our testing with VMs, at least so far. And the other aspect of this is I think we pursued trying to keep the test VM image skinny. In the past, we tried to build our own with a different project model a test image, we called it. We had the build root uh, kernel, and we were trying to just build NFS packages and SMB packages on top so that we could use that like a very skinny VM. as opposed to using Ubuntu images for our VMs. But I guess we don't have the either the know-how or the bandwidth to go and investigate and invest time in that stuff. If there is any other, like, solution we can use for a VM test image that's readily baked, perhaps, because most of the scenario testing elsewhere outside of us, outside of Manila, happens with Cirrus images, right? And those are really lightweight. Except Cirrus does not provide a package manager that will let you install these, NFS, CIFS, SFFS clients for your use. So that's not very useful for us. And I guess we tried Fedora at some point, and we realized, no, it's pretty much either same or a lot more resource intensive than Ubuntu in some cases. So the alternative was to try to think, maybe we can have a long running VM, set up by the base test class, just keep it around for all of our scenario tests, but do all of the scenario tests within the same VM. Such as, you're mounting different shares, you're doing different things, but don't clean up the VM. But that sort of defies the logic for stuff. We would have to set it up under a different tenant, because we also do multi-tenant testing with our tests, which which is what we try to do because we want to simulate a real cloud where there are multiple projects, multiple users and stuff. So in this case, we'd have to invent a way where, let's say, one of the tenants sets up the VM and it just stays around and until the end, and we have some way to stash the credentials of that tenant, of that the test credentials, and then clean it up at the very end. And within that VM, we can do whatever it is that we're currently doing. As an alternative, we can just use containers, except you'd still have to use containers. We are doing this on the base host, so assuming that the storage has access to the base host, we could just bring up a container and bind mount. If we can mount to the DevStack host, we should be able to mount to the container as well. We might have to be creative around that.
Yes.
So it's worth, I think, experimenting with one of the tests and seeing where this gets us.
Sure. Yeah, I agree with that, and I think it's a good way out for us, because I know that we could, like as we did for the Manila image, and we tried to make it skinny, but even though we tried it, there are always like updates for that, and whenever like we go ahead and go to the next version of the US that we chose, then there will be a couple more things added usually. And the images that are supposed to be lightweight, they are also growing up. So yeah, I agree with that. It would be nice to have someone looking at this. So if you are particularly interested about this Tempest work and Manila Tempest testing, it would be good to have. It would be like a good exercise, because you will touch many areas of this. So yeah, if you're interested about that, and please let us know, and we could try to help you and brainstorm on this and try to think about a solution for this issue using a different approach compared to what we have been doing. Yep. Is there something else to add to this scenario testing part? Any question I'd like to ask if you're interested or something?
I was just wondering, I didn't understand. What is the goal, the time frame, the schedule for delivering this to? You have something, or it's just an idea, and if someone have enough time, they can start working on this, or there is a plan for starting working with this migration from VMs to containers?
it's kind of an idea at this moment, but I mean, it's being a pain for us in the CI, right? I mean, all of us submit changes to Garrett, and we know that it's taking a lot of time to get all of the changes passing because the jobs will time out and there will things like that will keep happening. So the idea is that we could try to fix that. So there isn't a specific timeline, but getting that moving, it would be kind of an important aspect of this already, because it would allow us to move on to other issues and stop putting band-aids into these issues that we figured out in the past.
Okay, and another question, I'm not very used to this. So what is the real impact of keeping running with Vim? I mean, our check job takes more time, or some jobs fail, the scenario testing is failing. What is the real impact that
It's both. So it is. I mean, we are running at the limits of the timeouts that are there. So if you see those timeouts, the reason they're happening is because we're trying to limit the concurrency of the Tempest test because we're running out of resources. And so it is that, as well as sporadic random failures, right? Like you may not run out of the resources, but you're close to that. And so I mean, something goes wrong, like these VMs, for instance, take a few seconds to boot up even on a slow dev stack node, but to set it up, I mean, for Cloud Init to kick in and have SSH connection into the VM, it takes typically like a couple of minutes each test. And so that's really long. I might be saying a couple of minutes, but I think there's a timeout set at 180, and sometimes we don't even reach that. So we kind of continue to wait until the SSH connection is available and stuff. And so I have not really investigated what goes wrong over there, but it's flakiness like that.
Nice. Just one question more. It's slowing down the entire pipeline. I mean, the pipeline, this is the bottleneck, the pipeline is job, or you mean that the job itself is taking longer, but yeah, it's not impacting on the entire pipeline, you know?
I think it does. So the pipeline is as long as the slowest job,
Yeah.
For the most part. And our jobs are, I mean, I think the slowest ones are around like 2.5, 3 hours sometimes. And so it's not very deterministic. It depends on where we have landed, which cloud provider and stuff like that. But otherwise, yeah, it's 2.5 hours or something to see your results. And that is when everything, all the test nodes get allocated to all of our jobs, right? If we're queued on something, it takes much longer. So I guess we have trained ourselves to not expect CI results if the CI is busy. And if the CI does pick up, we've trained ourselves, okay, don't look at this for another 3 hours, because that's how much time it takes to run all of the tests. And it's not a good place to be, but at the same time, I'm not too bothered by, okay, it takes 3 hours, not a big deal. The time it takes is usually not the problem for me. It is, okay, so it's failed, and it's failed because it couldn't SSH into the VM, and that's not a problem with the code. I'm trying to get it to pass CI so that it can get merged. I can clearly see it's not got to do with the code, for instance. But I can't tell the difference unless I'm a human, right? Like, in the sense, I don't know what it is that I'm changing in the code. So those tests matter. I can't just turn them off, for instance, or make them, tag them as unstable so that it's okay if they pass or sometimes fail, sort of thing. So what bothers me is those sporadic failures more than the time it takes, because the time could just well be 20 hours if Zool is too busy, and yeah, that's not much we can do over there. It's just, the community CI is going to be busy at times. But a way to avoid the sporadic failures would be to fix our own issues here of a bloated test VM. And we could fix that by figuring out, hey, can we try to use a different image that does, can we try to think more creatively about this test VM that we don't have to, use all of these resources? Or why are we testing all the time with VMs? Could we just try to make it use a different approach? If the idea is that you still want to test the tenant namespacing and all that stuff, you should be able to do that without VMs. Is the idea? I don't know. I mean, it is going to be tricky, because there's also parts of that where you want to test the tenant networking, which I mean, we don't have a default container orchestration aspect for tenants. We'd have to then start depending on external services like Magnum or Zune or something in order to set up these containers in the tenant namespace, plug them into the tenant networks and stuff like that. So each has its own challenges. I guess we need somebody to try spend some time with this problem.
And I have more one question that came to my mind now. It's very noob question. Where do we track this kind of things?
TechDebt. No, yeah, we don't. That's a good point. I think we used to have like a to-dos Etherpad, and at some point, I don't know, Carlos, if we ended up creating a wiki. But
Yeah.
That's a very good question. Not at all a noob question. It just means, I mean, we've just not spent time to, think a lot about this. So if there are bugs, these become low wish list items, right? Because they're not really blocking anyone, and we don't really have all of the data that we need to say, okay, we're going to target it and fix it up in this release kind of thing. So I think in the past, we've just ended up keeping it on Etherpads like this or in on the wiki.
Yeah, I think we need at least some documentation. I don't know, Etherpad or spreadsheets or stuff like that, just to, because like, I mean, next week or 2 weeks after today, I will probably not remember exactly what is the issue, or we starting worrying about our tasks and so on, and at least on NetApp team, this kind of things we get lost. And
Agreed.
if we have some place that we can visit during the release asking for help, I think if we have like some spare developers that can help, we can assign to this. But the point is that we, like your point is during the PTG, and now, at least for now, our team is busy, but during the release, some folks can work on this kind of issues, but we don't remember exactly. So
yeah, what the issues are and when they're this thing.
Yeah, and I think we have some place to add these improvements for the CI or something like that, and try to revisit it during the release, in the middle of the release, or during the Manila meeting. We don't need to visit every single Manila meeting, but at least once for release, to check if there is someone that can help, or at least give some updates about how these topics have moved, if someone already tried to move them, something like that. So, I mean, because if we don't write this down, at least on our side, the things.
No, yeah, I agree. We definitely need to track this better. And yeah, it's currently in our heads or in some random etherpads that we tend to lose, or or on the wiki that I'm not able to find right now. So I agree. We should track this in some place. Maybe Launchpad, maybe Tiger. We can chat.
Yeah, this can help.
Yeah, sure. I can take an AI for this to create kind of a Taiga thing and like keep all of the tech debt items there and try to revisit this during the weekly meetings. But yeah, thanks for the idea and for the suggestions.
Yeah.
Okay. Right. So I'll proceed to the next topic. I mean, we are like 9 minutes late according to the official schedule already. So I'll try to cover this quickly because I don't think there are many updates on this since the last time we spoke about it. So the next thing here it's the completing the migration to Ubuntu 22 in our jobs. So the community has done this. And like most of our jobs were successfully migrated to Ubuntu 22, but there are two jobs that we didn't manage to because there were kind of packages missing or things like that. One of them was the clusterfs job, and the job fails because there is a package missing in the newest OS version, which is like it can uh, run or the cluster command. So I had assigned this bug to me and I attempted a fix, but apparently it will take a couple more investigation to get this moving. So there's still something that I need to work on, and I would like to get this moving and this job migrated altogether. The next one is the other job that's failing. It's the Ceph job, and we needed to keep this in the audit release, and it was basically failing because we could not install one specific library like this one. So Gotham started to investigate this, and yeah, there's another issue related to this, which is like with the IPv6 jobs, we kind of saw this coming for the CentOS jobs. And like for the CentOS jobs, when we were trying to run them with FIPS, we realized that for CentOS 8 and 9 already, we could not locate the Zebra package or Quagga because they like were not being supported by the distro anymore, and the same happened to Ubuntu. So in order to get that working, we would need to have like a replacement, and those are packages we use for IPv6 testing. So we will need to replace Quagga, and their suggestion is to replace it by FRR, and that's also something we have like missing on this front. Gotham, is there something else you'd like to add?
No, you covered it. So on the Ceph side, the CephFS job that was running on DevStack plugin Ceph is derived from the Manila Tempest plugin job, and we kind of decided to move to a different, to change the base OS, move to CentOS Stream to run those things, and partially because of the lack of availability of some packages. And we wanted to stick close to what the Ceph community was building, and they were not building packages for Ubuntu yet. And you heard me say that yesterday during the Ceph talk. And so right now we're using CentOS Stream 9. So I think we can go back and have a base job as well in Manila testing with CentOS 9. But like you said, IPv6 setup is one of our issues. If you've looked at that code, you know it's a special snowflake. We kind of have a test setup based on, for DevStack, driven by Manila's own DevStack plugin, and it sets up BGP on the test node. It sets up the Neutron dynamic routing BGP speakers, so that we can start listening to tenant VM routes and stuff, and we know the routes are advertised to the host, so that the storage system can respond to the right tenant VM and so on. So that stuff is not working for Jammy or CentOS 9. So we just need to upgrade software, perhaps change configuration and stuff like that. And the suggested replacement seems to be that FRR tool, and I don't know much about it. I'm going to try to spend some time, you know, seeing if there could be a straightforward translation. Else, we might need to seek out some help with the Neutron folks um, in the community. But it's a similar thing for all IPv6 jobs. It's for LVM as well. So if we can figure that out, maybe LVM can continue to stay with Ubuntu on Ubuntu, and maybe the fixes are the same that we would do for CentOS 9.
Awesome. Yep. Thank you very much for the updates.
Yeah, I think I can target this around, milestone 1 kinds.
Awesome. Good stuff. Yeah. Thank you very much for the efforts on this and for pursuing a fix for this issue. Another tech debt, which is kind of like more of good news and not that tech debt, is OpenStack Client. We've reached feature party, and we spoke about it in the previous PTGs, and it was a huge win for us. And there was only one thing that we were missing, which was version auto negotiation. That was keeping us from adding a deprecation warning to the native Manila client and move away of it, and we could solely focus on the OpenStack client. So as stated already in the past, and as we have been reinforcing over the releases, we are encouraging the development for OSC now. So when people are submitting features and they are touching the client, we have been enforcing this for a couple of releases already. So the primary requirement now is OSC, like implement your features in OSC. And if you have like the spare time and you'd like to keep updated like the Manila client, then you could do that too. But our focus now is on OSC. And we have the feature parity, and Kiran's worked on one bit that can take care of the version negotiation. So the change has landed. We are back importing it until Wallaby. For Wallaby, we won't be able to produce releases because it's in stable extended maintenance already. So we can like backpart this, but we won't be producing any release for this as the extended maintenance branches policies suggest us to do. So yeah, that's basically the update we have. So finally, now we can add the deprecation warning to the native Manila client. I see Gautam's come up with a change for doing that already. So thank you very much for pursuing this. It's a huge win for us, and I think we are quite close to get this part completed. So thank you very much, everyone, for the efforts on this. I know it's been like a couple of years already, but it's great to see the outcome now. Is there something else you'd like to add?
No, I think we had the thing of allowing for new features to land in Manila client, but I think, we wouldn't require it, yes, but we wouldn't also encourage it at this point because it starts getting untenable to maintain. So while we're setting this deprecation, I think we would stop accepting any new features. Bug fixes, security fixes are okay until we decide to remove the client, the old shell client altogether. But I guess we want more people to be trying the OpenStack client and filing bugs and trying to get it in a good shape at this point, rather than trying to spend any more time on the shell client that's going away. So when I say actively discouraged, I think it would mean do not write code. You will get a -1. You will not be allowed to write any new features into it. I suppose we can take that stance because I understand if people are enamored by the old shell client and don't want to let it this thing. But we've spoken about it quite a bit. I feel like we should just enforce it. And
Yeah.
and I mean, we're free to change that based on any feedback that we might get saying, no, this is impossible. You guys can't let this happen, kind of thing. But so far, I've not heard anything. Are there any such strong opinions on this? If there are none, I mean, maybe not. You're not in this call, but you have that strong opinion. And you have a way to communicate that to us. Let us know. But if you're adding any new APIs and writing any new client stuff, I mean, this would be the expectation. Please don't add anything to the shell client.
I have one point. First, I think, yeah, that's the best way to force the customers to go to the OSC, delivering features only on OSC. And okay, I want to use this because I have just this option. And this is a good approach. But I just want to see if we have a task, or at least someone is aware of that, about updating the documentation. I know this point because like NetApp has its own documentation, the DOG. If someone of you knows about this, and on the DOG doc, we have a lot of examples. So some users, some customers read this and okay, I want to run migration, and we have on our documentation an example of running migration, and the example use the Manila client, not the OC. No, it's not using the OSC. And I don't know about exactly about the Manila documentation, the official Manila documentation. If we have some example there, and if it's so, probably they are on Manila client, the normal Manila client, and we need to revisit the all documentation and check if all reference to Manila CLI, all of this reference are changed to OSC. Otherwise, the user will read this and say, okay, that's the official way of running with Manila, and they end up using the legacy client, which is bad. I think this is an important thing to pay attention. And we will probably do this as soon as possible on the Manila and the NetApp documentation. So I have a task for changing the entire Manila and Cinder CLI to recommend the OSC CLI.
Yeah, point taken. I definitely agree, and I think we have a bug somewhere. But if we don't, we'll create a bug, a doc bug to go through all of the docs elsewhere. I think most of it is in the Manila repo, at least as far as upstream documentation goes. And that's what we can do. We can replace all the upstream docs, and I would also encourage you, Felipe, to take a look at the Python Manila client that's changed, that's on line 173. It provides some docs for the Manila client itself, and that might answer the question of, do we have enough in terms of letting users know what changed, how much changed, how do you get how do you change your usage patterns and stuff like that. If there is anything more required over there, we can fill it in. But yeah, on the Manila side, we'll go fix stuff, and I don't know if it's there elsewhere. Our documentation is pretty huge, so we can go figure out all the places that we've probably sprinkled the Manila CLI over the past years.
It's a huge documentation. Yeah, that's a hard work. But I think this is very important. We need to care a bit more about our docs, because this is the way that the customer, the users, they run Manila. This is the first interface with the user, the end user.
Totally. Awesome. So yeah, point taken. Sorry.
Yeah, I have an idea. Instead of just logging Manila CLI, this is deprecated now. Could we somehow make this work that it always logs the command that should be used as a replacement now, so that the customers would not have to go to this decoder documentation and translate
Yeah.
to the new OpenStack CLI call? Or
Yeah, I think that's worth investigating, and I think it is yeah, it is straightforward. Like I had to go through that exercise yesterday when compiling the stuff, so it's there. We know what each command translates to, so we could suggest this is a way to use this.
Yes,
Sorry,
very good point.
You meant translate print the print the translation. Okay, you can use this command. No. It's not about translate internally. I mean, you run Manila create, and our internal binary calls the OSC and run. It's not about
No,
that.
that will be hard. And the
Okay.
reason it's also, I mean, maybe that's not what the user wants. I mean, it's possible the user is entering this on the shell, by hand, but it's also possible that they have written some script and they're using this in their scripts as well. Although we would hope that they're just writing against the SDK at that point, but it's possible that their scripts would break if you did something like that, because the outputs and everything may not match one-to-one. But adding a suggestion to log.error would not hopefully break those scripts.
Okay, it's just about logging.
Yeah.
Okay, nice.
Because that deprecation warning is going to standard error. And I'm hoping that it's not going to break anyone's workflows that way. But I like that suggestion. We can certainly think of that.
This is a good idea. The problem is that makes the deprecation much harder. You need to go each operation and translate and see, okay, this is the command. And go, yeah, we have a lot of operations.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we do.
that's a good idea.
But it's also, I mean, it's also already mapped. So I mean, maybe we can have a way to parse that mapping and pull it from there into the code, rather than adding it into every command.
I see.
Yep, that's good points. Thank you for the docs concerns and also the suggestion to try to have this being like try to have a suggestion when you type like the Manila command. I think that's going to be really useful for people to get used to the new CLI and start using it more. Okay, so yeah, I think that's all I had for OpenStack client. Thanks for the input. Yeah. Okay, so I was wondering, should we cover the SQL Alchemy topic now, or should we postpone it for like a weekly meeting, for example? I'm only mentioning this because we still have like 2 other topics to cover. One of them, I think it's gonna take a lot of time.
Yeah, fine by me to postpone. I think the only call out over here, if we have a larger crowd here than usual, is that the database queries are changing. The way we do session handling is changing. And in SQL Alchemy 2.0, we will lose the auto commit equals true thing that we've been so relying on. So we've instead started replacing it with a different way to handle those sessions. So if you're writing any more database queries or if you're reviewing code, please pay attention to those. Just that we haven't finished the translation yet, and you will see the link on line 178 has a lot of open patches to finish that work. So most of it will, I mean, we would have to get this in this cycle because I mean, OpenStack has to move and start using SQL Alchemy 2.0. And I feel like that might happen either in the Bobcat cycle or in C. So it would be nice for us to, you know, iron out all of our queries in that in this cycle. That's it.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for the update, Gotham, on this. Yes. Okay, is there something else you'd like to add for TechNet? Yeah. Okay, I'm taking silence as no. Sorry for running late with this, but yeah, we had a couple of important things to cover here, and thank you everyone for the inputs on this. I think we have been like 1 hour and 30, like topic after topic and discussion after discussion. So why don't we take like a 5 minutes break, and then we can get back to discuss the scheduler data placement based on the vendor specific tool, and then we can continue like as well to the OpenStack SDK right after that, the other one. How does this sound?
Fine.
Okay, so I will pause recording. Okay, welcome back. And I think we can proceed to the next topic, which is scheduler data placement based on vendor specific tool. Felipe, floor is yours.
Okay, can you open the Etherpad? Hi everyone. So I want to present a problem and some solutions for this problem, and see what do you think, guys, and open this discussion. So what is the problem? We have the idea of, we have this scatter data placement, and we want to solve this problem based on a vendor specific tool. And what is the vendor specific tool? It's the NetApp Active IQ Unified Manager. The NetApp Active IQ, or simple Active IQ, it's a NetApp software. And just to introduce in a high level, what is this software, to make that everyone is on the same ground. It's a management and monitoring tool for NetApp storage system. Yeah, this is just for NetApp storage system. So it monitor and manage the storage system. And basically it unify the storage infrastructure in a one view, in a single view. So you basically go to the software and add, I have this storage, this other storage, and you add all storage that you have in your infrastructure, and you can have, and the software will collect some information, and using machine learning and some analytics to provide predictive insights and recommendations for optimizing storage performance and reducing risks. So the idea is collecting some data, the software collects some data and do some predictions for the operator. And so, yeah, this is the idea of the Active IQ in a high level. And since on top in 9.10, the version 9.10, Active IQ provides a data placement REST API service. So, I mean, you can request to the software based on REST API, what is the best place to create a new volume or a new share in the Manila names. So basically the data placement gives you a list of candidates where to provision a new volume. So it's like, it gives, I have an example of the API call, but it's basically show a number, a score for each pool that you have. In on tap name, it's each aggregate. I will show the API call, but it's based on telemeter and that Active IQ Manager. It's constantly collecting data, history using AI, and the properties that it takes in account, just for knowing, it's based on the request performance level. And this is an important thing for us, the performance level. It's like a name a rank that you can name this rank. We have some system performance level, and you can create a custom one. Also, the number of volume, the number of lifts, the number of SVM, and a lot of other things are taken account for taking the final decision, the score. Talking about performance service level, so this is an important thing in the ActiveIQ data placement. It basically defines the performance and storage objects for our workload. So when you create a share volume, you can require like this share must be on a place that has some latence, some IOPS, some expected IOPS, some like maximum IOPS and minimum IOPS. So you can request this this to the system, and the system will find what is the best, what is the place that can satisfy that request. So I have added here one example. This is a system defined. We have the extreme for database data. This is the name of the performance service level, and it's used for high throughput in lowest latency. And there's a number for expected latency, for the peak IOPS, expected IOPS, and absolute mean IOPS. These numbers don't matter for us now. It's just it matter for the end user. You know, for us it's just from the Manila side of view, it's just rank. So we have the extrema for database data. We have some database data, and when you change the name of the performance service level, we change these numbers. You know, we have different numbers that are the object for the workload. So what you want for this workload? I want this workload to have some of latency, some of IOPS, minimum and maximum IOPS, and the system will find what is the best place to create this new volume or this new share. So I add here, can you open, Carlos, please, this API call example in line 20? Yeah, this is an example of the call in a high level. Just we basically have first the request. This is the request, and then we have the response. What is important for us in the request? Yeah, we have the capacity, which is the size of the new share, evaluation method, opt method, priority order. All those parameters, the way that you want to the system. You want the system to find the best place, so you can use some like different evaluation method, different priority order, and the important thing is the SSL key. The SSL key is the this is the performance service level. So when you are creating a new share and you say, okay, I want this to use this performance service level. So the system, you filter firstly which pools can have this performance level, and then we'll weight them, give them a score. And the final one that's very important for us is the resource keys. And the resource keys is the pool. So which pools do you want to take in account for taking a score? So we have here, it's like 1, 2, 3, 4. Each one is an aggregate. So you pass the aggregate, but you don't use the name of the aggregate, use the UUID. And you pass the cluster, because we have the system handles more than one cluster. So you need to pass the UUID of the cluster and the UUID of the aggregate of that cluster. And it makes one single pool for the system. So you basically want to create a share of 10 giga using that performance level. And in one of those resource keys, I mean, one of those pools or aggregates. So calling this request, we have the response. can you scroll down, Carlos, please? And this is very easy to understand. We have a score. It's a number. It's a weighted score, like 0. The first is 0. The second, third, 20, and 10. This is the number, and it means how good this pool is for creating this chart that you request. And the key is the pool itself. It's the same name that you passed before. So the key is the pool, and the score is the number that the goodness, I would say. It's a score that, so the highest means the best one. Nice. I think this is pretty straightforward. And this is the active AQ. Can you go back? Yeah. So this is the active AQ in a high level. We have this, we can call it, pass some like the size, the pools to take in account, the order or the way of evaluating the scores, and then the software returns saying, okay, this is the score for each pool. And the next step that it's important for us is how can active AQ be integrated to Manila? We want to have this software helping Manila to decide what is the best pool to create the share, and what active AQ needs for working. First, the user and password. You need to have the user password of the active AQ. We need to call REST APIs. We need to have the performance service level name or ID. And we need to limit the resource. So we need to pass the cluster UID and the aggregate, the pool UID. So the solution should provide those, should take those points in account, right? So have a user and password for ActiveAQ, call it REST API, access the performance service level for that request, and know what is the cluster UID and the cluster aggregates for the pools that Manila knows. So the solution that that came to my mind is create a NetApp specific scheduler weight. So we have a scheduler aware on scheduler of Manila, and the idea would be create a new one where that request the scores for the ActiveAQ. So it would call the REST APIs. It will pass those information that I showed on the API request, and the response will contain the scores, and that's done. The where is finished. And I think the first problem I have about this is how can we handle with other vendor pools. So we know that Manila environment can have NetApp stars, SFFS stars, container stars. I don't know, more than one vendor specific backend. And I think that my first idea, and we can brainstorm and see if it's the best, the where we only run if all pools are NetApp. I mean, if the environment, if the Manila environment has only NetApp backends, it will call the REST API. Otherwise, it will be skipped. What I mean by skipping the where, skipping a where is basically returning 0 for all. It means that that where doesn't know how to solve the wait process, the wait phase of the scheduler. So it will check if all pools to be waiting are from NetApp. If so, okay, I use my way of waiting those pools. calling REST API and take the numbers. Otherwise, I will return 0 for all hosts or all pools. And as a result, when you have the sum up of the wires, a 0 is neutral. It doesn't take into account. So that's the way. Skipping when backends out of NetApp is part of the environment. I mean, it can be part of the environment. It doesn't mean that you cannot run with NetApp and I don't know, Safet. You can have this environment. The point is, during the wire phase, if you want to that shard to go to NetApp backend, so you would add to the shard type this request. So during the first phase, which is the filter phase of the scheduler, it will eliminate all backends that are not NetApp. And during the wire phase, there is just NetApp backend, and you can call this REST API. So it's not blocking running with NetApp and Safas. It's just in make for when you have just NetApp, you know that you want to create a NetApp in the NetApp backend, in the NetApp storage. It will use a specific wire that is smarter and knows much more about the storage than our driver, because it uses it's continuous retrieves information from the storage. It has much knowledge about the storage, so I think definitely it will get a better answer than using like goodness function that is based on, or filter or goodness function based on utilization that NetApp reports. Because the utilization, we have some math in our internal driver, but it's just a static math. And while the ActiveIQ runs machine learn, and it's more prepared for taking this decision of data placement, to know what is the best place to create that shard. And okay, next problem about the ActiveIQ is the performance service level. But this is very easy to solve in the Manila context. It's just about creating a new NetApp S-Respect. So we have a NetApp S-Respect that the keys can inform or not. If it's part of the request, the shard create request, this S-Respect, we pass this to the API call. If not, we just send us any performance level. We are not requesting a specific performance level. So we use the shard type for having the performance level. Okay, the next problem is getting the cluster UUID and aggregate UUID. So in the wire phase, it needs to know what is the cluster UUID of that pool and what is the aggregate UUID of that pool. And we need I think the solution would changing the report that the NetApp driver does for the scheduler, adding a new field, which is the cluster UID, or can be, we don't need to pass exactly the cluster UID. You can just pass like pool UUID, or NetApp pool UUID. And this would be the entire UID of the cluster and the aggregate. And the wire just get this from the pool status and put to the REST API request. So this problem, I think, this can be solved this way. So during the driver initialization phase, we collect and save this in a cache. And during the driver update status, we see if the cache is filled. If so, we send to the scheduler. Otherwise, we just try to get and fill the cache. So we do once. It's not a problem for it. There is no performance degradation because we just collect the aggregate UID and the cluster UID just once and then save in the cache. And all other parameters that are part of that request, we can use the Manila conf. We can set as an option for for setting using Manila conf, like evaluation method, priority order. What is the best order for that environment, that deployment? Okay, this is the order. Okay, so during the setup in this layer in the Manila conf, the user can change those values. And since they set a number, set a value, we will use during all life of Manila that values. And I think that's it for what is the problem in a possible solution I have. I had some questions that we can pass through. I don't know. We can try to read first them and then see if there are more questions that you guys want to ask. But I would just pass through the questions. So can the scheduler have a driver specific layer? That's the first question, because it's the most important one. It's a blocker for this feature. I haven't seen any scheduler driver, any scheduler layer specific for a driver like that. I can be wrong, but I haven't seen any. So can we have that in the Manila? Second problem, can the layer phase call external APIs? Again, I haven't seen, the layer phase of scheduler perform some REST APIs. So I mean, this is a synchronous call, so it can have some issues. Normally, the layer phase come up with the scores locally, just based on, I don't know, share size or the utilization reports by the driver, and so on. So it's locally. What I'm bringing here is a way of taking the scores externally, calling our REST API call. And the third question is, what if the active IQ is down? Should it skip or fail the layer phase? So if the active IQ cannot respond, what is the best option? Should we skip or evaluate as 0 and skip the NetApp driver? But this is more an implementation decision. I think this is not a blocker, so I don't care much. I think we can find the best solution, asking for the customer what is the best use case and find the solution. But this is just a question that I brought here. And the next is, how can it run Tempest test? That is the important one. How can we test this in our CI? This will be part of the code, and we need to have a Tempest testing. Can it just be tested by a NetApp lab? Because I think we cannot test this on the community CI. Yeah, I can leave a ActiveAQ in our lab and add a job for the community CI for using this, our internal ActiveAQ for testing. So we can, but yeah, we need to see the feasibility of this. And the last one, does it need a spy? Should we spec this out, or it's enough just a blueprint and coding? I think that's it. I have some questions, and I want to hear from you guys, from the community. What do you think about the feature? What do you think about the solution? And if you have more questions. So thank you for listening to this.
Awesome. No, thanks. All right. I mean, the rundown was tight. Like I felt like I could, you know, I had questions in the middle, and so I feel like I may have questions even after this that I might forget. But to answer your questions specifically, can you have a driver-specific where I would actually, I mean, translate that into something else, saying yes, the scheduler is built for extension like this.
Okay,
Uh,
sure.
d-
Thank you very much for your help.
Sorry, I think we
Yeah, that's all. Thank you.
Just a minute. I think I'm able to.
okay,
Okay, I'm muted.
awesome.
Sorry.
Yep, no problem. So yeah, the scheduler is built for all sorts of extensions, right? And you will be surprised. People actually do add their own custom layers and filters everywhere. And it's a common thing. We ship with a default set of layers, and your question really is, can we have our code in the scheduler that ships with Manila, as opposed to can we supply a separate layer that somebody can just grab off of somewhere else and just put it in their deployment, right?
Yeah,
Isn't that
my point is, can this code be on the Manila tree, on the Manila upstream tree? It doesn't need to be, and of course, on the default layers, that comes with the scheduler, but it will be there for the customer just, changing the scheduler layers, but not as a default one, but as part of the Manila tree.
Yeah, my concern there is just this, that we I mean, there is the interface, definitely no issues there, but how does maintenance of this go on, right? Like you said, we need continuous testing of this, and testing the scheduler is not something that's very straightforward, even from a Tempest perspective. If there is like a yes or a no, like of testing the filter scheduler is actually pretty straightforward, but testing layers, it's complicated. It depends on you simulating a situation to weigh these things, and that's not going to be straightforward. So I would say, like, we should think hard on that, in the sense of, for the long-term maintenance of this, as opposed, you having a vendor driver for the share manager interface, and it was contained, but now you're going to have a vendor supported layer as well. So it's going to be in a different place in the code. That's what you can see, and we should have a way to actively add or deprecate these things based on the same rules that we have for the share manager, is the concern over there. So my answer is, it's complicated, but if there is enough reasons to put it in the Manila tree, like you have the code available easily to somebody that is consuming it. The distros don't have to go out somewhere else to pull this other piece of code to start shipping it with for Manila consumers and stuff, for NetApp consumers. I guess.
I think the idea about testing this code would be this this where would just be used with NetApp own environment.
Right.
So we can change our job. We have a job that runs GHSS and no GHSS to every single execution. It would have the scheduler configuration to take this in account. So it will be part of our scheduler. Our NetApp execution would use the default layers plus the ActiveIQ layer.
Yeah.
So just because this layer just based on what I had there, how to handle with other vendors pool. The idea is skipping when at least one pool is not NetApp. So this where has only effect when running with NetApp only pools, you know. So the possibility of breaking other vendors is unlikely because we are totally skipping. We have a filter. The first phase we will filter and we will guarantee that all pools are from NetApp. Then we call the ActiveAQ, you know. So I think this will not cause any disruption or breaking any other vendors. First, because no one added this unless they want to use the ActiveAQ, because this is not part of the default one. Secondly, we can just test with NetApp only. That's exactly what our job does. Our job does not run with like NetApp and Ceph or container driver. No, our job just run with NetApp backend. And so that's exactly the scenario that ActiveAQ should be used. But
yeah, and I mean, if you were to enable this, I think, I mean, at least I would enable this in the dummy driver job and test the behavior that it is not going to affect anything else. Like, you know, it's always skipping that stuff if just because it's not there, or the fact that active IQ is not available, etc.
yeah,
And
that's
so
a
that
good idea. That's a good idea.
you get that testing with something that's not NetApp as well. Yeah, but I mean, going back to the testing question, I don't have a definitive answer. Like we've struggled with trying to test the scheduler. Tempest cannot be. I mean, at least Tempest in its current state is mostly for API testing. You actually need like some workloads and creating a bunch of shares. Maybe something like Rally or something is probably better at simulating the scheduler testing a lot better.
Yeah,
Tempest.
your point is about if the weighting.
The weighing itself, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if we should validate the weighting process, you know, because look, this is an external solution. So if like the ActiveIQ is weighting in a bad way, that's a problem of the about ActiveIQ. You know what I mean? We cannot do anything more than reporting to the ActiveIQ developers or team and say, okay, this is not scheduling very well. This is taking the wrong decision, or you know, what actually matters for us is, can we call the API? It returns a score. Is a score of a valid number? Yeah. So if it's the best way of weighting or not, I think this would be a ActiveIQ problem, not a Manila problem, because it's like, I mean, it's like when we are, I mean, creating a share, you know, and you know this share takes too long to be created. This is not a Manila problem. I mean, it's just a problem of on-type storage. Of course, there are some side effects for Manila, but Manila is just using the storage the same way as Manila would use the ActiveIQ as the decision. We just need to guarantee that the API calls work fine. I mean, it can run and request and get a response, parse the response, and send, return some scores, and that's it. If that's, I think, I really don't care much about how ActiveIQ
No,
works.
yeah, it makes sense. And what you just said is answering your own question then on line 63. I was trying to answer it and trying to tell you that I don't think we have the tests, but you're saying even if we did have the tests, what we would be testing, that the way our behavior is correct may not be adequate, because we can't do much about it if the backend is misbehaving and telling you something wrong. It's a problem that cannot be fixed on our end. Yeah. So cool. Does this need a spec? I think so. And the reason I mean, and it doesn't have to be all that elaborate, right? Like we do have a way to write light specs. The idea is to have this information that you've provided us in a spec, so that we could discuss the implications of this. And like you said, I mean, part of the things that we do want to see in the spec is how does this impact every Manila installation, and you would clarify that this is not enabled by default, etc. And in terms of all of these questions that you asked, that you have answers for, you would just provide that in the spec again, so we have a wider understanding of the same thing.
Sorry, what is the actual difference between light spec and spec? I don't know much.
A light spec is a blob of text. The spec template is more suited for things that have a wide impact, all the way from the API, the database, the driver interface, the every single aspect of Manila. A light spec, on the other hand, is okay. We don't really have a lot of impact, but maybe we just pick and choose what we want to highlight in that stuff, and just provide that, because we don't have an API change, we don't have a database change, and so on. So it basically allows you to provide your details without having to stick to that spec format, is what that is.
Carlos is an expert for light spec. I'm seeing a lot of light specs for him.
Yeah, I wrote that too.
Nice. Yeah.
Yeah. So you also have the flexibility to modify this. The template is just a guideline. You can always modify it. And if you say there is a other impact, please feel free to call it out. And I feel like we will have questions with this in terms of, I mean, there is a certain sense of opaqueness as it is with any NetApp feature that you guys are proposing, right? Like there's only as much that we can anticipate and ask questions of. We can make sure that it's not affecting the core in any negative manner when it's not required. So that's the only thing that I would expect out of something like this during the spec discussion.
Yeah. I think this request it's similar to the driver,
Yeah.
It's out of the car scope. So I don't know if you have like things like that on the past with scheduler.
Yeah, no, they have happened. So technically, I mean, they don't happen as often as this thing. So the scheduler is meant for this sort of extension. Just that I'm aware people just do it in their deployments. And in the past, we've been asking folks to try to bubble up and push back to the upstream some of those things that they've evolved in their own deployments and stuff like that, things that work out for them. If in case it benefits everybody else. And I mean, we've had the goodness waiver and the capacity filter and enhancement because of stuff like this. We've had those extra spec ops because of stuff like this. Somebody thought, okay, this is stuff that I like using in my cloud, and it provides a little more extensibility. Let me help, pushing it back to upstream and stuff like that. So absolutely encouraged for sure. The only difference here is that it only affects NetApp pools and not something you can help. That's what it is. That's a whole feature. Can it call external APIs? Of course it can. Just be mindful that this is meant to be lightweight. So in case you're hanging for like a long time, you just negatively affect the whole scheduling process. And it shouldn't affect anything as far as like the scheduler is an imperative thing. Like it will pick up the request and process it. And if something is taking long, it takes long. to finish getting that weighted host to finish scheduling. But I would be mindful of that when you're coding. Like, I would say if this is calling an external API, I would consider all those checks and balances to make sure that the request isn't hanging for a long time, or it's going to return within a period of time, and what is the mitigation if it doesn't return within that time, kind of thing. Just as good design, I guess. Does that make sense?
Yeah, do we have a plan for running active for Manila Scout? I don't know.
For scheduler?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, for the most part, it is run active almost everywhere it's deployed.
Okay, so could it impact in some way? I think I don't think so, right? I just wondering.
I mean, so even if you're running the scheduler active, at any point of time, the request to create something is going to be just sent to one particular scheduler instance. So you would have to ask, I guess, is ActiveIQ okay with that? Like if multiple scheduling requests are happening at the same time, is ActiveIQ okay with getting requests for different shares, but 2 requests at the same time, 3 requests at the same time? Is that okay with the ActiveIQ?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's the idea of the activity. But yeah, I need to confirm that. That's the important point.
Yeah, I think I have two other questions here. One, like, it's for when ActiveIQ is down, should we skip it or should we fail? You mentioned, like, if we skip, we'll just, get, if I remember correctly, we would make the NetApp backends like lower, but isn't it an option to just like fall back to the old scheduler, or is it what would actually happen?
There is no failure in this case. I mean, the weigher returns
Yes.
something always. And so in this case, I guess he's asking if can we return all of them as, possible hosts, just skip the weigher, and whatever other weighers have added weights, we just stick with whatever those weights are. I think that's fine. That's the same approach, right? You don't know what to do, so you just skip that weigher.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like the other thing, but I don't know if you checked any other way to do this without the weigher. This could be like something very straightforward that has something obvious you've already looked at. But we do check the status of every pool every X amount of time. And for that call, like the backend is supposed to respond with the status, with the capacity, and all of those things that we already like try to send from the driver to the scheduler. So the question here would be more like, is it the call to ActiveIQ costful enough to just like already try to add some sort of info there, and then we could just like try to update any of our weighers and try to look at some common thing? Because I mean, if we have a common capability that we are setting and saying, this is for example, this is the capability that would allow the backends to say, okay, this is the most suitable one, then we would just like check that at the scheduler level and then see like, okay, this is the most suitable one, and then I can try to ignore like a couple of other filters or a couple of other things that we have been doing because the backend said so. So if we end up like only with the NetApp backends, the scheduler ends up only with the NetApp backends, then they would already have like this sort of flag, and it would like avoid having one extra layer just to like check on and do these other calls on for ActiveIQ. But I don't know how costful it is to just send the request to ActiveIQ and how long it takes for processing that info, because we do send the calls to the backend to see if it's healthy and to get the info often. So I don't know if that would add much to the response time.
That's a good point. That's a good idea that we can think. While you were talking, I was thinking, but please, can you go back to the API call? I think, yeah, this is the API. I think you can see the parameters to the request. One of the parameters is the capacity. So, and the second parameter that's a problem from my view is the SSL key, is the performance service level. So it is specifically for one request. Now, the point you can say, okay, can you request to the ActiveIQ, what is the best aggregate or what is the best node for that moment? I don't know if you can like leave the capacity empty. I don't think so. And we can the SSL key. We can say we don't care about the SSL key. We don't care about the performance level. But I think the capacity is a required argument. And more than that, I think the idea is that the advantage of using ActiveIQ is that it is constantly changing what is the best tool, you know?
Yeah.
If like, I think the way that it works is I'm constantly running some machine learning, collecting data and getting feedback and training my machine learning. And when you request in that moment, I can say, okay, this is the best one. And the other is not the best one. And when you request them, okay, this is the best one. And I think it takes in account the capacity. And one desired thing that I think during the report status that I think we cannot, we could like, is the performance level. Because the customer would like to, during the share creation, set in this share type, what is the performance level for that specific share? So like, is it for low latency? This is for low throughput. What is the desired workload for this share? And this performance level is a key thing. It's a key feature for ActiveIQ, and I think the customer wants to have this during the request. And during the using requesting this, I don't know if we can request without passing a capacity, you know. Even if we cannot pass the SSL key because it's per creation. Each creation can have its own performance service level, the desired workload. So we would like miss this feature, and this is a very important feature of ActiveIQ that can help the business to change the workloads, like to sell, different workloads for different customers, and use these performance levels in the Manila, in the share type. So the ActiveIQ would guarantee that, okay, this workload will be on a specific location that has this performance, has this latency, and this throughput. So I think that we may have this, and there's the point that you mentioned, Carlos. I don't know how much it would like make a kind of degradation for the periodic tests, like, because we need to run a REST API calls. I don't know, that could be not an option, but I don't know. What do you think? I don't know.
No, I feel like I understand this is more of a dynamic thing as opposed to having, it's a different kind of dynamic thing, right? Like you're basing this on the consumption, and it's sort of like what Nova does with placement these days. And basically you're trying to reach back into the backend to get some more statistics when you're doing the scheduling. That's what's happening. And it's not something we can surface beforehand. And you do have the knobs that you have already have for servicing stuff beforehand. You have the performance data, you have the capacity information, you have all of these capabilities information, etc. Those are static, or rather change a little less dynamically than this. So I can see the use case, and I feel like this is a good pattern for almost anything, and just in different ways. And NetApp chose to do it this way, but I'm sure, like if we were to integrate anything else, this would be a way to funnel in that backend knowledge.
Yeah, it makes sense. Thanks for the explanations, and I can see now that this could yes be the best suitable option, especially considering that there are if there's the flexibility with like choosing what's your priority order, and like the storage could account on that. Yeah, thanks for explaining it.
I think the idea of keeping the code in the driver makes it easier to maintain, to deliver the code. But yeah, I think this time we should change the core code. Yeah.
Okay, so
don't worry about that. That's exactly why we were trying to build those integration points. The scheduler has its integration points, just that there was no vendor specific code out there. The data service is meant to have its integration points. The share manager has its own integration points. So you're just harnessing one more integration point.
Design, you mean, right?
Yeah, it's meant for that sort of extensibility.
Yeah, I know that we can change it completely. This scheduler, we can have a different scheduler driver. And I was thought about, I was like thinking about what if we create a different scheduler driver, but basically my scheduler driver would be exactly the same as this one. Yeah, because I like the filters, the filter driver is a good one because we have like availability on filter, we have like the capability filter. So the filter phase, I would keep with that. I just want to change the way that we do the wait phase. And so it seems better just adding a new layer instead of creating a new scheduler driver.
Agreed. Yeah.
Yeah. Makes sense. Awesome. Thanks. So yeah, if you are, I think you will be working on that spec, right?
Yeah,
could be a light spec suggested.
What is the deadline? I forgot. I actually don't know what is the deadline for merging the spec.
We don't have an official one yet.
Okay.
But yeah, I intend to update the official release schedule and share that with everyone, so we can discuss on the dates and see if they are feasible, as we usually do. So yeah, I'll work on that, but it will follow like the same pattern we did for the previous cycles, like targeting the same weeks we targeted on those times.
Oh, okay. The idea is, at least my idea is delivering this this integration during Bobcat. So I have to write the spec, it must be merged, and then code and send the patch upstream. So I think I have enough time, but yeah, I need to write this spec and see if we can get the approvals.
Awesome. Thank you very much. That was a great discussion and a great presentation about all of this feature. Yeah, thanks, Felipe. Is there something else? Is there a question from the audience or something else you'd like to bring up?
Not from my side. Just thank you, everyone, to be here and listen to this presentation.
Awesome. No, I had one other question. So is this happening elsewhere as well? I don't know if you can do something similar with flex walls on Cinder?
I don't think so.
Yeah,
but
I mean, this is
because
at an aggregate level, right? For you guys, it's
yeah, because the NetApp storage, it the full idea of NetApp storage is more like the aggregate.
Yeah.
So the Manila fits very well on the NetApp storage. The Cinder, yeah, it can have a way of saying what is the best flex vol for creating a file or a loop on the Cinder side. And but
no, I can imagine something like this with something that's not what is that, like something that's not on tap, maybe solid fire or something like that. But I was just curious if you're pushing for this across these two projects at the same time, so you could have like a syncretic discussion. But it's okay.
no. We are just
Yeah.
trying to deliver for Manila. In Cinder, yeah, we keep using the Cinder schedule. We don't have any expectation in that direction.
Okay, makes sense. Thanks.
Real.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Yeah, it was a great discussion topic. Thanks for the presence, everyone. Yeah, we have one last topic to this agenda, which is OpenStack SDK updates. I can try to make it really quick. We would have the North Dakota students joining us, but I think they couldn't make it. So yeah, I think we can cover this. I can share a bit of the status of where we are and some of the good things that they have been doing. So yeah, OpenStack SDK has been a topic for us for a couple of cycles already, where we almost like didn't have integration with OpenStack SDK, and with that we were not allowing people to use the Manila APIs through OpenStack SDK. So like back then, I think it was with the Boston University students with their capstone project, they started working on this and they started getting very good progress on these activities. So since then, we have been having a couple of more APIs covered in the OpenStack SDK. And for this cycle, or at least until I think May, we'll have the students of the North Dakota State University working with us and trying to close even more the gap in the OpenStack SDK. They are doing great progress and they have been working on a couple of things already. So this is the combo board for the OpenStack SDK support for Manila. And there are a couple, as we can see, like the list of done things, it's already big, but there are also other things that are ready for review and other things that they have been working on. So there are also like the list of the things yet to implement is big. So these are actually actions that we intend to keep like tackling over the cycles, and possibly trying to get the help of like interns, or if someone else is also interested in implementing this. It's very encouraged that this work get like somehow done. So it's great to see the progress, and the students have been working on a couple of changes. Some of them like they are starting to work on, and some of them had already been worked in the past by outreach interns. So this is kind of the list that the changes that they are picking up at the moment, and they have done at least like commits and such. So there are a couple of changes that are still waiting for reviews. And it's a bit difficult to get the reviews in the OpenStack SDK. We have like the Zorillas doing the reviews there, but we also need people from the OpenStack SDK to do the reviews. So it's a matter of like also trying to ping them and trying to get them involved in making these changes to land. So it's been good progress, and we are happy with the progress that they have been doing. They are making lots of good things. So one of the things that we wanted to get for OpenStack SDK were like the support for share access rules, because in a couple of, I think Nova may also need a couple of other APIs. So I think you were in most of you were in the discussion with the Nova team on Wednesday, where we went to the Nova room and we started talking about the support for virtual UFS, which is basically like allowing shares to be mounted on VMs directly. So, but in order for that to happen, they needed a couple of things. So APIs to access for access rules, for example, and they have been working around using Manila client and trying to use the functionalities directly. But with OpenStack SDK, it would be like easier because they were already doing the imports and so on. So that's one part of the work too. We are trying to get all of the APIs that the Nova team needs, and the North Dakota State University students, they are helping us a lot with that. So it's great progress so far, and we think we'll be able to get everything Nova needs from the SDK soon, especially if we can get the reviews. Yeah, so is there something else you'd like to add, Gotham, Ashley?
Nope, you covered it well. Yep, lots to do, and hopefully we'll get to have. I mean, I think we're having a great coverage now, thanks to. I mean, these 3 interns that are working with us are absolutely exceptional. It's a pleasure speaking with them in terms of, and they're very coachable at the same time. They're teaching us a lot, so it's been nice. I know we'll run to the end of the internship pretty soon, so we'll try to get as much done and give them a lot of mileage as well through this.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure their semester concludes in May. But I mean, they're just doing really well with picking up new resources and getting them done pretty fast. So I think by the time we conclude the internship in May, we'll have a laundry list of items to review, but not so much new resources to create within the SDK, which is a load off our backs, really.
Yes, indeed. Thanks for the input, Gotham and Ashley. This is indeed being a very fruitful internship, and we are very happy with the way it's going so far. So yes, this is amazing. So I don't know if they'll check the recordings, but yeah, we are really happy with the work, and yeah, kudos to them, and also to the previous interns that have been working on this and managed to get us to the state PR so far. Okay, so that's all I had for OpenStack SDK updates. We are 37 minutes late in the schedule, but yeah, yeah, I think it's all good. We had awesome discussions. It was a great week. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope we managed to get a lot of things started over this week. We will have the happy hour right after this call. It won't be recorded though. So yeah, recording ends here. Thank you everyone for this very productive week of PTG. I'll be sending the summary to the mailing list of the topics we discussed with the AIs and so on. So yeah, thank you everyone for your participation, and it was great to see you all here.